welcome to Programming, a series about programming where I will be teaching you more about programming. So subscribe to learn more about programming. So first in the series, we'll learn about function types and function pointer types and what they're useful for. So let's say you wanted to use a library like OpenGL. You don't typically download OpenGL via your package manager or through the internet like normal libraries which you use in your day-to-day development. In most OSs, it usually comes already installed in a dynamic library file like a DLL in Windows. For example, this one over here in my device. It's usually installed in your graphics driver and written by your GPU manufacturer, for example, NVIDIA, Intel, AMD, etc. So when you want to call OpenGL functions, you can just call them in your program because your compiler won't know what this symbol is and it's going to generate some form of error. I'll make a video about static and dynamic library files and leave it at the top of the window in case you don't understand what those are. So how people tell their compilers there is a function that exists somewhere which you can call is via the use of pointers. A pointer in simple terms is just the address of any symbol in your program's address space. And what I mean by address space is the amount of memory your operating system allocates to your program. So once you have this address space or this block of memory, you can get the location of individual objects in that space, whether it be an integer, a character, an array, a string, or any other custom class which you may have created. And because functions are also stored in memory, we can have pointers to functions. And that's what a function pointer type is. It's just a pointer or the address of a function. What it's useful for is whenever you write a call to a function in your programs, your compiler creates an instruction in your program that tells the CPU to go to this location, and over there's a function, run the steps that that function tells you, and give me the result. So function pointer types are just the addresses of functions in our program. So now that we know what function pointer types are, we just ask our operating system to give us the location of these OpenGL functions. And most developers typically do that via libraries like glfw or glad. And these streamline the process of getting the address of these functions. So in glfw, as an example, we have this function over here called glfw get procedure address, the procedure being just another name for a function. So this function get procedure address takes in the name of an OpenGL function, and then it returns a void pointer. Because it doesn't really know what exists at that location, it just knows that it's there. For example, somebody could ask me the location of building XYZ. I might know that it's in location 256 in my neighborhood, but I might not be sure what exists over there. It might be a museum, a supermarket, or maybe just somebody's house. So the same way, this function doesn't really know what it's returning. It just asks your operating system for where the function is and then tells us. So now it's our job as the programmers to tell the compiler what exactly exists in that location and how it can use it. So how we do that is through casting. We can cast this void pointer, like this is just an address, something like a character pointer, an integer pointer, a particle pointer, so that the compiler can know how it can use the information contained in that location. For example, if we casted this into an integer pointer, our compiler could know that the information that exists here can have mathematical operations carried out on it, so we can be able to add it and subtract, etc., And maybe if we said it was a character pointer, we could be able to concatenate it with another character and maybe say a plus b is equal to the characters a and b. But if we cast the pointer into the wrong type, the compiler is going to interpret the data in it in a wrong way, and then it's going to cause undefined behavior. There, in some cases, you can cast to another type and it work, but in most cases, it's just going to give you some undefined behavior. So be careful with casting your pointers. So now when we get this function, for example, glclear, and get its address, instead of casting it into an int pointer or into a char pointer, we have to cast it into a function pointer type. And that's where function types come in. If we go to OpenGL's documentation, you can see that glclear is a function that takes in an unsigned integer and returns nothing. So we as the programmers have to go to the compiler and tell it, interpret this data over here as a function that takes in an unsigned integer and returns nothing. And now if we store this data into a variable, the compiler will be able to say, the data in this place is a function that can take an unsigned integer and return nothing. So now it won't throw an error when you call OpenGL functions, because it knows where the function is, how it can be called, and what kind of result it will give back. Another example would be how to use the OpenGL function getVertexAttributePointer. For clarity, instead of writing the function type at the end of the as keyword, we could declare it before we use it, like so. This will just tell the compiler wherever you meet this symbol, replace it with this type over here. We can get the address of the function, cast it to a glVertexAttributePointer type of function, store it in a variable, and call it. So summary. A pointer is just the address of any symbol in your program's address space. An address space is the amount of memory that your operating system allocates to your program. A function pointer is a pointer that knows that the data is pointing to is a function. And a function type is just a type that describes a function. Goodbye.